So now it's time to cover topic 6 for, we're going to talk about reproduction. And so we're starting with asexual reproduction. The advantages for asexual reproduction is that it's faster and easier. There's no time that's needed to look for a mate. These simple organisms can just divide, and then there's more offspring. A disadvantage is that there's no variety. The offspring are all going to be identical to the parent. And that's not good in terms of environmental change or even for evolution. There needs to be variety for that species to be safe. Then we have sexual reproduction. The advantage there is the variety due to the recombination of genes. However, the disadvantage is that it does take more time, more effort, and more risk is involved. So let's take a look at mitosis. This is one of those forms of cell division, and it's used for asexual reproduction. And so the number and types of chromosomes in the daughter cells are going to be the same as in the parent cell. Remember, you start out with one cell and you end up with 2 identical cells. Letter C there says large organisms use mitosis for growth and repair. Simple organisms will use it just to reproduce. One division of a cell is going to produce 2 identical diploid 2N cells. Remember, diploid is describing a cell that has 2 sets of chromosomes. That's what di means. Di means 2. So these cells are all going to be diploid. They're going to have 2 sets of chromosomes. In diploid, like I said, they're defining it there for you. It's a cell with a complete set of chromosomes. Then we have meiosis. This is the other form of cell division. This is going to make gametes that will be used in sexual reproduction. A gamete is a sex cell, like an egg or a sperm. One cell is going to divide 2 times. It's going to go through 2 cell divisions, and you end up with 4 different haploid cells. And haploid, remember, means that you're going to have half the number of chromosomes. So that way, when the sperm and the egg, which each have half the number of chromosomes, when they fuse, you get a full set again. You get the diploid number. I'm on letter C now. It separates pairs of chromosomes so that offspring get 1 chromosome of each pair from that parent. And each daughter cell or gamete gets only half the chromosomes from the parent cell. So here's a side-by-side comparison of mitosis and meiosis, starting with the same parent cell, but you go through 1 cell division in mitosis, you end up with 2 identical cells, or identical to the parent cell. In meiosis, it's going to go through 2 cell divisions, and you end up with 4 daughter cells. And remember, one of the important things in meiosis is crossing over that occurs during that first cell division in prophase. The homologous chromosomes are going to swap DNA and create more variety in the DNA. Okay, so now we're going to go through the male and female reproductive systems. This is going to be new to you because we did not have a chance to cover it during the year. You will be doing a separate activity on reproduction, human reproduction, later towards next week. So for the male reproductive system, males have testes. They produce and store sperm, and testes are found inside the scrotal sac. It is located outside the body. Sperm are haploid cells that are created through meiosis. So meiosis occurs in the testes. Sperm are produced in large numbers throughout a male's life, beginning at puberty and then until the day they die, essentially. Sperm are smaller than egg, and they are mobile. They have a tail, a flagellum, that helps them move. And sperm only provide offspring with 23 chromosomes. Everything else is going to be found in the egg, like the cytoplasm and all the organelles. All the sperm is really doing is delivering its half of the DNA. Then there's testosterone. This is the male sex hormone. It is produced in the testes. That's what produces the body hair growth, the deeper voice, the development of the genitalia. All that is caused from testosterone. And the penis is the structure that transfers sperm into the female reproductive system. Humans have adaptations for internal fertilization, and the penis is one of those adaptations. Semen is the fluid that carries the sperm. And semen contains sugar to provide the sperm energy. Sperm have a long way to swim, and they need a constant supply of energy. So there is some like sugar in the semen that they can use for that energy. Okay, moving on to the female reproductive system. Females have ovaries that produce eggs, and that's where meiosis occurs in females. Eggs are the haploid cells that are made through meiosis, and females are born with all the eggs that they'll ever need. They don't make new ones, they just have them when they are born. An egg is not fully developed until ovulation, which is part of the female menstruation cycle. Females are born with millions of eggs, and there's enough to last several lifetimes. They never use all of them, but they have enough there that would last them a long time. Eggs are the largest cells in the body, and if you look at like normal type in a book or something, a human egg is the size of the period at the end of a sentence in a regular textbook. Eggs do not move on their own, and so they rely on the sperm getting to them to deliver their chromosomes. Eggs contain 23 chromosomes and all their cell parts, like mitochondria, the ribosomes, everything that the offspring are going to need to grow and develop. So I did mention the menstrual cycle before. The menstrual cycle lasts an average of 28 days. It's an individual thing, but that's the average for many women. Ovulation is typically right in the middle of that cycle, and this is when an egg is released. Usually one egg per cycle gets released, and a lot of times the ovaries alternate releasing an egg every other month. Menstruation is the shedding of the uterine wall if fertilization does not occur. What the uterus does is it builds up this lining that has blood vessels and everything. In case an egg is fertilized, it's going to have a nice place to embed and be able to start to develop. But if the egg is not fertilized, then menstruation occurs, and the shedding of that lining of the uterine wall comes, and then along with the egg is expelled too. If pregnancy occurs, then the whole menstrual cycle will temporarily stop. In a female, when you go from the ovaries, the egg travels down the fallopian tube to be carried to the uterus, and the uterus is the womb where the baby will develop. The uterus is a muscular sac, and that's, like they said, that's where the baby can develop. The vagina is the birth canal where the baby will leave the body. So fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube. It does not occur in the uterus typically. And then the fertilized egg is then called a zygote. When the egg and the sperm fuse, you call it a zygote. Fertilization is going to restore the complete set of chromosomes, so the zygote is diploid. There's 23 chromosomes from the egg and 23 from the sperm to get 46. A zygote will develop in the following order. It goes through a process called cleavage, which is just a type of cell division. The cells just divide kind of quickly, but they don't differentiate. They're all still identical at this point. And it goes on for a couple days. And then it can go through differentiation where the cells begin to form tissues and organs. Then the cells decide what kind of cell they're going to be when they grow up, essentially. And then after they start to differentiate, now you call it an embryo, when it starts to have body parts, essentially. Then as it gets bigger, you call it a fetus, and that's when most of the major organs are formed, not necessarily completed, and then it continues to grow through cell division with mitosis. There is something called a placenta that is going to transfer nutrients and oxygen from the mother to the fetus. So it goes from, it's connecting the two blood streams, but not directly. It's kind of got like, through diffusion, nutrients and oxygen and things can pass through the placenta. So it goes from the mother's blood to the blood of the fetus through the process of diffusion. The blood of the mother and fetus does not mix, ever. The mom and the baby can have two separate blood types because their blood never mixes. The fetus is attached to the placenta by the umbilical cord. So your belly button is where your umbilical cord was attached. And at the end of your umbilical cord is the placenta. And the placenta attaches to the inside of the uterus. So waste produced by the fetus is also removed by the placenta. Since the baby can't go to the bathroom in a toilet or breathe out any carbon dioxide because they can't breathe, they're in a liquid environment, they still need to get rid of their waste products. And that's going to occur through the placenta, and the mom can get rid of it for them. So the wastes like carbon dioxide, urea, salts, those can all diffuse from the placenta into the mother's blood. And since the fetus does not eat solid food, it does not have to eliminate feces. The child is vulnerable to alcohol, drugs, and etc. because the organs and systems are still developing. So if the mother drinks or smokes or does drugs, that will have a huge effect on the baby because it is developing. And if any of those chemicals interfere with their development, that baby might be born with problems. Okay, so now looking at this is a side view of the female reproductive system, and I'd like you to label this on your picture. So structure 1 is pointing to the fallopian tube. Structure 2 is the ovary, and structure 3 is the uterus. Structure 4 is the vagina. The structure that's sitting in front of the uterus is the urinary bladder, and you can see the urethra is the tube leaving the body. Females have a separate opening. They have the urethra where urine leaves their body, the vagina where a baby leaves the body, and then they're not showing the rectum, but that's where feces leave the body. So females have 3 openings in this area. Okay, now this is a front view of the female reproductive system. Structure X is pointing to the uterus, but you should note the 2 ovaries, the oval-shaped structures on the sides, and then the fallopian tubes coming off of there. And then the opening from the uterus to the vagina is called the cervix. And that's a structure like a very muscular ring that protects the baby when the baby's growing in here. It stays shut very tight. And then it has to obviously open up quite wide for the baby to be born. This is a picture of the front view of a male reproductive system. Structure A is the testes, one of the testes. And then the structure that sits right on top of the testes is called the epididymis. So the sperm are produced in the testes, and then they kind of sit in the epididymis and mature and then wait to be expelled from the body. Tube B, this whole long tube, is called the vas deferens. Structure C is a urinary bladder. So you can see in males, it's the function of the penis is going to be both for urinary excretion and for the expelling of sperm. There are some other glands here. There's the prostate gland, there's bulbourethral gland. They're going to help deliver fluid for the sperm to create the semen. And then structure D is pointing to the actual penis. And here's a side view of the male reproductive system. The testes is down here. X is pointing to the vas deferens. When males have a vasectomy, what happens is the doctor will just cut, and this is a very simple procedure because they don't have to do any internal surgery. They just kind of cut a small opening in the scrotum, and they cut through the vas deferens, and that is not going to allow sperm to go from the testes and leave the body, so they can't fertilize an egg. So the sperm still get produced, they just can't go anywhere after. This diagram is showing the process of fertilization and then development. So on the left, we have a sperm and an egg, and when they get fertilized, this is going to be our zygote. So structure, or line A here, arrow A, is going to be labeled as fertilization. And then it starts to go through cell division And we can call letter B either cleavage or just simply mitosis. And then it's going to form this hollow ball of cells called a blastocyst. And then it starts to indent in, and this is where the cells start to differentiate and decide what they're going to become. And structure X is just kind of pointing to these developing cells and differentiating. All right, so this is a baby inside of the uterus growing. So we're going to label all the structures here. Structure 1 is pointing to the fallopian tube, and you can't see the ovaries anymore. They're kind of off the page. Structure 2 is the muscular wall of the uterus. And structure 3 is just kind of the inside cavity of the uterus. Structure 4 is the vagina. Structure 5 is pointing to the umbilical cord. Structure 6 is pointing right here. This is pointing to the placenta, and this is connected to the mother's uterine wall. And then you can see how it's connected to the baby. So that's how nutrients are able to pass from the mom to the baby, and then waste products pass from the baby to the mom. And then structure 7 is pointing to the amniotic sac. And that takes us to the end of our reproduction topic. You can now go complete your homework.